The Sega Saturn is a criminally underrated and misunderstood console. Most people, myself included, for a short time anyway, thought the system was far weaker and less capable than it actually was. In order to help dispel the myth that the Sega Saturn had subpar graphical capabilities, I've compiled a list of my top 5 best looking Sega Saturn games. So let's jump right in. Starting off my list at number 5 is Burning Rangers. The premise of this game is fairly unique. Essentially, you're like a cross between a Power Ranger and a firefighter. With only a quick glance, you can see how much better this game looks than early Saturn titles such as Virtua Fighter 1 or Daytona USA. It also looks superior to Tomb Raider for the Saturn, and it's got these really shiny neon colors and an art design that's straight out of a Saturday morning kids show. Burning Rangers graces this list because it is a technical marvel that pushes the Saturn's hardware to the very edge of its limits. The fire and lighting effects present in this game defy all reason. There is no way the Saturn, with its complicated and limited processing abilities for 3D games, should be able to generate translucent flames that billow transparently around character models with hardly a single sprite being cannibalized by the effect. This game is a tour de force, an unbelievable achievement on the Saturn that ought to be recognized as such. Nights into Dreams was one of those games that I saw commercials for on TV as a kid, but was never able to find in local stores, try as I might. For years, I endured people telling me what a must-own this special experience of a game is, but by the time I was old enough to afford my own copy, my original Sega Saturn sadly stopped working. It wasn't until I was already a grown man that I was able to get my hands on a copy of this game for the first time, and let me tell you, the hype is all true. Visually, this game is a feast for the eyes. The backgrounds are chock full of detail that makes everything feel so alive. You can tell that heaps of love and care were poured into the development of this game. It has the feel of a project that has been built from scratch over and over again until the full vision of its creator was realized. The atmosphere, like the game itself, is nothing short of magical. The spectacle of blending a 3D environment with 2.5D flight tracks makes each venture into this world a delight. Nights is a dream that I hate to wake up from. In a dream we can do anything we want to. There's nowhere I'd rather be but here with you. The stars above light the way only for you. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is just as responsible for turning me into a fighting game fanatic as Street Fighter 2 Turbo. The Saturn port of this arcade classic may not technically be the definitive version, but it's for sure one of the best out there you'll ever find, especially when you compare it to the PS1 and the dreaded Super NES ports. The transition from the arcade to the Saturn was accomplished almost perfectly here. This version of Street Fighter Alpha 2 boasts a vibrant palette of colors, with fluid character animations done in a gorgeous artistic style. I remember when first playing this game on the Saturn, it felt like I was watching a quality anime. I almost forgot that I was playing a game at times. The vivid scenery and flashy special moves land this title a solid 3rd place on the list, and number 1 in my heart. Saturn Directional Pad for life. Virtua Fighter 2. Yeah, I can remember a few years after the Saturn had been out, my dad picked up the console on the cheap from a garage sale, and he gave me and my brother the system with a slew of games including Street Fighter Alpha 2, Daytona USA, and Road Rash, which we really enjoyed all of those. And at the time, I remember being a little bit disappointed with the Sega Saturn because I compared games on the system like Resident Evil and Tomb Raider with games like Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64, and I started wondering why Nintendo and PlayStation games seemed to look so much better than Sega Saturn games. That is, of course, until I popped in Virtua Fighter 2 for the first time. I could not believe how realistic and dynamic these graphics were. Keep in mind that this game runs at a blistering 60 frames per second, and this was in 1995. Needless to say, after playing this game, I never doubted the potential of the Saturn's power ever again. So I wanted to show you guys all the stages and all the characters in the arcade mode, but for some reason I just couldn't beat Jeffrey. His throws are really, really overpowered, but that's okay. I can be overpowered too, as long as I use cheats. Suck it, Jeffrey. That's right. Astal is my #1 pick for best looking Sega Saturn game. Sure, it isn't a 3D spectacle like Virtua Fighter 2, but if you consider the history of the Sega Saturn, I think my choice makes a lot of sense. You see, originally, Sega intended the Saturn to be a 2D powerhouse, with 3D backgrounds and elements. As a company, this is where Sega thought the market was going. Unfortunately, due to the success of Virtua Fighter 2, Sony decided to make a console dedicated to running 3D games, and in a panic, Sega just kinda slapped an extra processor into the Sega Saturn with no idea at all on how to use it, and this made coding games for the Saturn extremely difficult for programmers, and in a way that was one of the largest reasons for the eventual downfall of the system itself. Astal is a beautiful game. The colors are vibrant, and the art design is superb. Everything about this game's visual aesthetic is charming. So charming, in fact, that I sometimes find myself wishing that Sega had been right all along, and that 2D games were still the future of the industry. To me, Astal is the best looking Sega Saturn game because it best accomplishes what the system was originally designed for. Unbelievably gorgeous 2D games. So yeah, that's it for my top 5 best looking Sega Saturn games. And please keep in mind, this is only my opinion. If your game didn't make my list, just let me know. I'm really curious to see what other Sega Saturn games other people think look the best on the system. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, because it really helps out and it lets me know if you're liking the content and what I should do next. So, until next time.